Hey guys, Zach here, and I've got a story for you today. Well, if you looked at the title of this video or saw the thumbnail, you probably have some idea of what I'm going to be talking about, but you may be asking yourself, Zach, how in the world did you spend $1,300 on studio gear you didn't need? Well, it's quite the story, so let's jump right in. In order to understand what happened, we have to go back about 2 months. I was producing a song for a client, and it was time to do vocals. So I had her come over to my home studio and I started the procedure that I always do when we record vocals. First of all, I want to say my vocal booth right now is in a bathroom. It's the only space that I have that's isolated enough that I don't get any bleed. So that's where it is, and that's going to be relevant later, so hold on to that in your mind. But anyway, it's in there, it's in my bathroom, and I put some isolation foam and stuff in there to help with the echo a little bit, so it's not super echoey or anything. And I don't get any bleed from my monitors back into the mic. However, sometimes I can still hear the singer through the door a little bit. So I'm getting bleed into my ears, but the recording is clean. Again, all that's going to be important later, so hold on to it. Anyway, so the client goes in there and I have her start singing for me like I always do so I can set gain levels at my interface. So she sings, everything's sounding great, I set the levels where I want them to be, and like I always do, I left extra room because most people always end up singing louder when you're actually recording the song than they did during the test run. So anyway, she goes in there, sings, I set the levels, everything's great. We start recording. We get through about 2/3 of the song, and then we get to this part where she really starts belting. It's a really cool part of the song because the whole thing kind of starts really down and then just climbs to this great belty, awesome part at the end. Anyway, we start recording that, and it sounds like the vocals are distorting. So I stop the client and I'm like, okay, hey, hold on, hang on a second. I think I made a mistake with the gain staging. Let's just fix this and then we'll do this part again. So I turn her down and then we try again. Same thing, the vocals sound like they're distorting. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm not really sure what's going on, but it still sounds like we're getting some clipping, so I'll turn it down. Keep in mind, throughout this whole time that this was happening, I'm not seeing any clipping lights anywhere on my gear. So if you've done any recording, you probably know that when your signal's clipping, there's usually some kind of indicator. Whether it's in the form of a red light on your interface, some indicator in your DAW, something. There's always some place where you can tell, hey, there's something wrong, I need to turn this down. But I wasn't getting any of that. Okay, so that's the weird thing. But anyway, I thought, okay, I don't know what's happening, but it's distorting, so let's turn it down. Turned it down again, and we tried again for the 3rd time. She starts recording again, and I'm hearing distortion, and I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. So we turn it down one more time, and at this point, the signal is way quieter than I ever record vocals. But I was like, okay, whatever, no big deal. If it sounds clean, I will just go in and post and bring the level up and match it to the other takes we did. All right, so she starts singing, and everything sounds fine to me. Now this is where we need to go back to the prior knowledge that I gave you a minute ago. Remember what I said about my vocal booth being in the bathroom? The microphone can't hear my monitors playing, but I can hear the singer through the door usually. So sometimes it's very difficult to tell what's actually being recorded. So usually I do the best I can to get a sound that I think is clean, and then as long as it's not clipping, I just trust my gear and I say, okay, I'm sure it'll be fine. So again, it sounded super clean. It was fine. I wasn't worried about it. So we finish recording, we get a bunch of great stuff, do some background vocals, and the client leaves. The next day I sit down to start editing, and here's where it starts to get crazy. Remember those clean vocal takes that I got yesterday? Well, they were sounding distorted. So I throw my hands up and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on now. Because remember what I said, there was no clipping happening. And in fact, when I was looking at the vocal takes, everything looked super healthy. There weren't a lot of like super big compressed square waves or anything like that. It looked super normal and natural, yet it was sounding distorted. So I did the best I could to edit with what we had, and I sent the client a mix. And I said, look, I think I made a mistake here. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but these vocals sound distorted to me, and I really think that they're not usable. So I really think we should redo them. And the client listened to it, and she agreed with me. This is never a fun conversation to have with a client that you're working with. You know, because one thing, as a producer, you always want to give the best results possible. And when something like this happens, it's frustrating because you put the best effort that you could into it, and it still didn't work out. On the other hand, you got great takes of the client singing, and sometimes it's very difficult to replicate the magic that you got that that first time. Anyway, thankfully the client was very gracious and she was like, look, I understand things happen sometimes. Let's just do it again. So we got another session on the books. So at this point, it's time for me to go into problem solving mode. I start racking my brain and I'm thinking, what could possibly be going wrong right now? So the first thing I thought is, well, maybe it's a cable. So I swapped out all the different XLRs I had and I tried them and I was still getting this distortion that I wasn't liking. So logically I thought, okay, maybe the microphone I'm using is bad. For a long time now, I've been using an Audio-Technica AT3035 microphone. It was given to me years ago by a friend of mine that was upgrading and he didn't need it anymore and he knew that I was getting into recording, so he just gave it to me to help me get started. So I've been using it since then. I've probably had it about 8 years and he had it for I don't even know how long before that. It's been discontinued by the company for a while and I figured, okay, maybe this thing just went bad. It wasn't a very expensive microphone to begin with and chances are it's just worn out. So at that point I started doing research and I thought, what kind of microphone can I get that sounds good, but it's not going to break the bank? And I ended up settling on the Aston Spirit microphone. It's a company out of the UK and it retails at $450 US. It had really good reviews and they said that it is designed for acoustic guitar and vocals. Those are the main two things that I record in my home studio with that microphone, so I figured, great, I should be in perfect shape with this mic. So I ordered it. So since I wasn't sure how long it would take for the microphone to get here, I decided to just borrow one from my friend for the next vocal session because I wasn't confident that the mic I ordered would get here in time. So I borrowed from him a Telefunken AK-47 microphone. So these are about $2,000 brand new, so it's a really nice microphone. It's got its own tube power supply. It's pretty cool actually. So we set up for the session, did the same procedure I described before, and we started recording. Now the vocals we were getting sounded good. They did. They sounded clean to my ear. I didn't really notice anything. Again, it's hard to really tell because of the bleed coming through my door, but I did the best I could. Recorded the vocals, the client was happy, she left. So I go to start editing the next day, and guess what? I was hearing distortion again. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I don't understand what's happening here. This is a great microphone. We spent a lot of time gain staging this to make sure this wouldn't happen again. I know the microphone works. I know the cables work. What in the world is happening right now? So of course the next logical step is, well, my interface must be bad. For a few years now, I've been using an Apollo Twin Duo. It's the first generation that they released, so it's that old silver one if you're familiar with the Apollo interfaces. Great interface. I've had it for years. I've loved it. The emulators and stuff that come with it are great. And it's been awesome for me. I've never had a single problem with it. But I did some reading online on the Apollo forum and I saw some people that had the same interface saying that they had a similar issue where suddenly out of nowhere they were recording vocals. They started getting a really weird, crispy, crunchy, distorted sound. They couldn't fix it and they just bought a new interface and the problem went away. Not happy now that I have to buy a $900 interface, but I love the quality of it. I don't really want to get anything else. So I go to Guitar Center and I order a brand new Apollo Twin X Duo interface. Comes in the mail and a few days later I've got a vocal session for another project that I'm working on. Totally different singer, different genre, everything is completely different. So the person comes over, we set levels and everything like I always do, start recording. We get great stuff, I think it sounds great, and the next day I sit down to start editing. By now you can probably see where this is going. I start listening to it and I'm like, okay, I'm hearing distortion again. Got a brand new microphone. At that point I had the Aston Spirit already. Brand new microphone, brand new interface, completely different singer. I'm at a loss here. I don't know what the heck is going on, but something is clearly wrong. So I start doing research and I'm like, okay, we're gonna figure this out. It's gotta be something that I'm doing wrong because at this point I've replaced all the gear, I've had different singers come sing and I'm still hearing this issue. So I start doing tons of reading on Apollo interfaces, on the plugins that come with them. If you're familiar with those interfaces, you'll know that they're kind of known for their emulations of outboard gear. So they've got a lot of like vintage preamps and compressors, tape machines, that kind of stuff. And they're great, I love them. But I figured maybe there's something I'm doing wrong, something I don't know about gain staging. So I started reading the manuals that come with all those. I spent hours on YouTube researching people using Apollo plugins, how to gain them properly, gain staging in general. anything about setting levels for recording, I was watching it. And then after that, I had another vocal session booked a couple days later. So I went into that armed with my newfound knowledge of gain staging, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna be meticulous about these levels. It's gonna be so far in the green, it's not even funny, and there is no way we're gonna get clipping. So I record vocals again after being meticulous. I was watching the meters like a hawk the entire session, and I was like, great, there's no way anything's going to be wrong. And of course, this wouldn't be a storytime video if we weren't going to hear distortion again, right? So I sit down and edit, and you know what happened. I heard distortion again, and I was like ripping my hair out. I was ripping my hair out. The hair that I don't even have because I was so frustrated. And I was like, what? I'm completely at a loss. Guys, at this point, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what the meaning of life is anymore. I don't know what's going on. I was completely like at a loss for words. I didn't even know what to say at this point. And then I had a thought. I remembered that 3 months ago I did a session with my friend Aaron, and he has a Universal Audio 610B preamp. And this is the exact preamp that I've been modeling this whole time. Mostly just because it's the one that comes with the Apollo, so I haven't actually bought any other preamps, and my thinking was, well, using some kind of preamp is better than nothing, right? Anyway, I did this session with my friend Aaron. We had done vocals and we ran it through his 610 preamp that he has. Same signal chain, but it's the actual outboard version. So I listened to that. I pulled that session up and I listened to it on my monitors, and I really focused on the vocals. They had the exact sound that I was hearing. It wasn't quite as extreme as mine, but it was there. And I realized maybe I'm just not liking the sound of this preamp. So of course then I had to pull up a demo immediately that I was working on and track some vocals through a different preamp. And it was like the heavens opened to me. That vocal was so clean and crisp and no distortion whatsoever, and it sounded great. So this entire time, and $1,300 later, the whole problem was I just didn't like the preamp that I was using. So the moral of the story is this. If you're recording something and you don't like the sound that you're getting, please do yourself a favor and research what's happening. Really spend the time to troubleshoot the gear you have and experiment. Try different things. It could just be that you don't like the signal chain that you have set up for whatever particular song or singer or instrument, anything like that. Recording has so many variables. So before you go and think that your gear is the problem, take it from someone who has already done that, made that mistake. Take the time to research and just try some things before you spend money that you may not need to spend. Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe can learn from the experience that I just had. And maybe you've had an experience like this before at some point. I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. Maybe there's something that you bought and you realized that you were maybe doing something wrong, or you just didn't like the sound of something that you had and you didn't really need that thing. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new content coming to you soon, including but not limited to reviews of those two things that I just spent a bunch of money on and I didn't need to. Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.